Last week, I composed the first piece of music in the new series Chess Pieces, and this piece was for the king called A Stately Procession. Now, I used just piano and sketched out the entire form of the piece, the melody and the chords, and this week I'm going to take that piano sketch and then orchestrate this for full orchestra. So let's jump right in and take a look. The first step was to decide on the size of orchestra I wanted to use, so I went with a pretty common instrumentation that I like, which is piccolo, 2 flutes, 2 oboes, an English horn, 2 clarinets in B flat, a bass clarinet, and 2 bassoons to round out the woodwinds, and then for the brass, I went with 4 French horns. I thought originally about using 6, but I think that was a little bit overkill for this piece, so I showed some restraint there. I went with 3 trumpets in C, 3 trombones, one of them being a bass trombone, and then a tuba. For the percussion, I have timpani, tubular bells, a crash cymbal, a marching snare and a field drum, and then a bass drum. I have a harp, and then this is our sketch here with the melody and piano. These staves will be hidden later on. And then for the string section, we have violins 1 and 2, viola, cellos, and bass. I think it's important to write for a fairly standard size orchestra, especially if you're writing concert music. We could have had 12 French horns here and a giant percussion section and all sorts of exotic instruments, but your hopes of getting that piece performed really are significantly diminished if you go for something that's that unusual. Okay, let's look at the melody and piano sketch and see how we might pull that apart to start orchestrating this. I'm going to take portions of our melody from our piano sketch, and this is the A section melody, and I'm going to look for groups of instruments to play the different sections. Here I'll put the lead into the French horns as this opening statement, and I can't think of any group that would be more regal or stately than 4 French horns playing this melody. You can see that I've transposed it down an octave, and that's to put it in a reasonable range for the French horn. This next short fanfare here, I'm going to put that into our trumpets because I'm sure that they will take the lead of that. Then I'm going to take this B section, which has a very big change of color, and I'm going to put that into the strings, probably into the woodwinds too, but we'll just have to see as we work on this. So we'll put that there. And then the final statement from this fanfare here all the way to the end, well, that's most likely going to be the trumpets, building up and leading to a big finish. Another thing that I want to address is this descending line in the piano sketch. Right now it goes down to a low D. I'd like that to go no lower than the double bass's low E, so that I can have them play the complete descending bass line down to their lowest note. I'll simply transpose the whole score up a major second from C major to D major, and that'll give me that low E that I want. Also, I think it will help out with that opening French horn statement, just getting it up a little bit higher and a little bit brighter. I find it interesting that the form of our piece mirrors the form of a chess game. In chess you have an opening, a middle game, and an end game. And here we have an opening A section, a middle game B section, and an end game A section. I didn't consciously plan that, but it is interesting how it worked out. Okay, now let's go into our first section with the French horn, and let's actually start writing some notes down. What we're seeing here is the French horn line that we put in earlier from the piano sketch at the beginning, and just the brass broken out so that we can more clearly see what we're doing. I'm going to take this line and I'm going to assign it to all 4 players. A full French horn section playing a melody in unison is a very common and beautiful sound. Let's take a listen to that. I mean, if that's not a regal and stately sound, I don't know what is. So now that we have that melody in and we know what the sound of it is going to be, let's start working on the other parts. I'm going to work on the tuba. I'm going to work on the bass line against this melody. You'll notice that the piano sketch isn't showing in this view, though I do have the chords from that sketch up top. The reason is because I don't want to be influenced by those temporary piano voicings. Here I want to write unique lines based on the chords for each one of these brass instruments. So starting with this tuba bass line, I'm going to do something very simple and just start with half notes here. We'll put a D in the bass since it's the D chord. And I see that we have D over F sharp for the next two beats, and I think that actually works well against the melody with the D in the melody, so I'm going to do that. That F sharp also leads nicely to this G, so we're going to go ahead and put that in. I think I'll have a little extra movement here, so I'm going to go up to the D with the A in the bass. I think that's good. It's a nice line that we have going. And then let's go down to the third of that D chord, the D major chord. We'll go down to the F sharp. Now here on the E minor, we could go to the G, but I don't really like that with that A in the melody. So I'm going to go down to the E. Now we see that the melody comes down from the A down to the root, the E. We're playing the E in the bass now, so I'm going to move that bass note up to a G against that E. And then looking ahead, we've got the E7 sus4 going to an A. So I think I'll do quarter notes here, go up to the G against the E, and then play a B, leading us down to the A. That's a nice line. Now I see that we go from A sus4 to an A chord going to an F sharp minor. So that sus4, that D resolving to the C sharp, that'll happen in another voice. So I'm just going to keep that in this voice. I also noticed that I could have a nice stepwise line moving from that A chord to the F sharp minor. So I'll just go two quarter notes, A, down to a G, down to the F sharp minor. So that's a nice line, and you know, that opens up a possibility here. This G could be, it could be A over G, so an A7 over G, but it also could be a stronger chord leading to this F sharp minor, which would be a C sharp diminished over G. So I'm going to just put a note to myself. Actually, I put it down here to try C sharp diminished over this G. Okay, our next chord after the F sharp minor is the F sharp 7 over A sharp. Oh, and I see why I have an A sharp in the bass here, because it's leading nicely to this B. So I'm going to actually use that. Let's jump down to the A sharp, and that'll lead beautifully to the B, the root of the B minor chord. Then we have three chords here with our melody moving down. So let's go in contrary motion with our tuba melody and move upward. Okay, let's take a listen to our tuba line. I'm just going to put a dynamic in here so that we have it. And let's see how that sounds. Yes, that works very nice as a melody. Not only does it work vertically with the chord structures, but it also works horizontally as a line unto itself. Okay, now let's listen to how that interacts with the French horn melody. That worked great. I'm very happy with that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and finish off this section by writing the trombone parts, and we'll come back and take a look. I finished adding the trombones into our A section, and I also went a little bit farther and orchestrated that short trumpet fanfare. Let's just listen first, and we'll talk about how the brass works here. The new trombone parts here help to fill out the harmony of the chords. Where we had the A and the D in our D major chord, we didn't have our F sharp yet. So you can see that trombone 1 takes that very important note, and we double the root of the chord in trombone 2. On this second half of the measure, we have a D in the melody and an F sharp in the tuba, but we don't have our A, the fifth. So again, trombone 1 fills in that harmony, while trombone 2 doubles the root. In the next chord, the G chord, we have a G in the melody and a G in the bass, so we need both the B and the D to fill out the chord. Up until this point, we've been talking vertically about what's happening in the trombone parts, but it's also important to consider again what line is being formed. Let's listen to trombone 1 and see if it's got a sense of a melodic structure to it. As simple as this line is, it does have that melodic shape and direction that we're looking for in our parts. Trombone 2 has admittedly a much less inspired part, but these repeated notes and concerted rhythms are very much in the tradition of brass chorale writing. However, trombone 2 does have this very important 4/3 suspension, and I've brought in the bass trombone to support that. Moving on to the fanfare in the 7th bar, you'll notice that I've stacked the top 3 notes in each one of these voicings in something called a voicing in fifths. This is a technique that I learned long ago in school, and I've mostly used it in big band writing, but it also can be applied to any kind of modern music, and it has a very unique sound. The idea here is that we're going to stack intervals in fifths on this A7 sus4 chord. So we'll start with our A note in trumpets 1 and 2 and stack downwards by a fifth. A fifth down from that in trumpet 3 is the D, and a note a fifth down from that in trombone 1 is the G. Together they sound like this. A very distinctive sound. And then we just plane up to the next chord, keeping that voicing in fifths. And then the next chord, same thing, voicing in fifths. And so on throughout the measure until it finally resolves to the A major chord. Let's listen to those voicings in fifths. These voicings in fifths work especially well with this fanfare, and especially in the brass, where it reminds me of those long herald trumpets playing fanfares to announce royalty. Let's listen to this one more time and how all these parts work together, and also listen for those voicings in fifths in the fanfare. Okay, I am going to go and start working on filling out the rest of the A section in the full score and start on the B section, and we'll come back and look at that. I've finished the orchestration on both the A and B sections for everyone except for the percussion. Even though I have a pretty good idea where the percussion is going to go, I don't want to rely on the pulse that they're going to provide to carry me through. I want to make sure all the other instrumentation is solid first. Let's look at what I did with the strings here in this first A. Zooming in on the strings section, we can see that we have the violas, cellos, and basses playing, and they're doubling parts from the lower brass. You'll notice that no one is doubling the French horns playing the melody. That's because I want to keep their pure brass regal sound. Here in the fanfare section, the harp is playing these voicings meant to have a bell-like sound. This line here indicates that they're to play these without rolling them at all. You can also write non-arpeggiated, but this line is a nice way to do that too. If we scroll up to the woodwinds, we can see that important 4/3 suspension played in the trombones being doubled in the English horn, clarinet 2, and bass clarinet. Here, the bassoons are doubling the string parts that we just saw in the cellos and basses. The very end of the French horn melody is doubled here at the octave in oboe 1. That's to give it a little bit of extra support as we crescendo, along with the other woodwinds filling in the harmonies. This turned out to be a good way to introduce a larger section of the woodwinds playing without stepping all over the French horn's melody. Finally, bassoons 1 and 2 are doubling the violas and cellos, playing a counter rhythm to our fanfare melody in the trumpets. Let's listen to all of that now, including that newly orchestrated B section featuring strings and woodwinds. I think that's really starting to sound like something. Still amazes me that it began as this humble little piano sketch, and now it's turning into a full-blown orchestral piece. Okay, let's look at what I did with the strings and the woodwinds in the B section. I approached working on the B section very much the same way that I approached working on the A section with the French horns. Since the strings were carrying the melody, I started with them, using the chord structure to write a bass line, and then lines in the other parts, harmonizing the melody. I did soften the phrasing with some of these phrase marks you'll see, and I think that helped with the color change and that softer feeling that we have in the B section. When the strings play their more harmonically interesting fanfare in this section, you can see that they are also voiced in fifths. So we start here E, down a fifth to A, down a fifth to D, down a fifth to G. So I carried the idea of voicings in fifths into this section too. Looking at the woodwind parts, we can see that they're built on doublings of the string section. Most notably, the flutes, though, are an octave higher, and they get all the way up to this high A, which is a beautiful and brilliant part of their range. Let's listen to the woodwinds in this section and see how they sound. Okay, I'm feeling like this video has been going on pretty long, so I'm going to go ahead and just finish up the orchestration on this entire piece, and we'll come back and listen to it. I have finished the orchestration for our first of the chess pieces, The King, a Stately Procession. I've even written an introduction to the piece to get the crowd up on their feet and signal that the king is about to enter. I thought it would be fun to play our original piano sketch and then the full-blown orchestration back to back. So I won't talk in between, and I'll say farewell now, and I hope to see you all next time.